Women's
All
rights.
right.
JF, what do you think? Should women have the right to vote? Should women have the right to work?
Well, let's say that I cannot really speak against women's rights without losing some funding of mine on Patreon and everything. So what I will say is that there was a very desirable state of affair about 150 years ago in society, and perhaps it would be good for women themselves to voluntarily choose to go back to that state of affair.
What do you think, Turd Flinging Monkey? You think that it's okay that we keep things going? I want JF to get an idea of your position on this. That's the reason I'm asking. Obviously, I already know.
Well, yeah, you're baiting me at this point. Okay. I don't want to cost JF any patrons, so I'll try to be diplomatic. So in society, there needs to be a balance between authority and responsibility. Just like in any business and any organization and anything in nature, authority and responsibility go hand in hand. If you are going to be responsible for something, you have to have authority over it. This is why when the government tries to take authority away from parents, trying to make it illegal for parents to do their job, it's destructive to the family, because parents have to have authority over their children in order to raise them properly, because parents are ultimately responsible for their children. In the very same way, men are, and always have been, and always will be, responsible for women. That hasn't changed. Feminism hasn't changed that. All feminism has done is created a very expensive illusion where women bitch to the government, and the government gives them gibs and welfare and diversity quotas so that women can role play as men. They can pretend, they can play dress up and pretend that they're like equal to men and contributing to society just like men. But it's all bullshit. That's why you have to have diversity quotas. Companies, if women were truly working just as hard as men and earning 70 cents on the dollar, no one would hire men. If women were just as good workers as men, you wouldn't hire men if you're going to have to pay them 30% more. It's because women are worthless. And not only are they worthless, not only are they not productive, they demand like breastfeeding rooms, maternity leave, like everything. They're a giant liability on any company that has to hire them, which is why the government mandates that you hire them. So under no circumstances are women equal to men. They never have been, never will be. Men are continuously responsible for women. This is simply transferred from individual men being individually responsible for individual women in the bonds of a marriage to men collectively being responsible for all women in the form of welfare transfer, where the government takes from working men, because according to the New Zealand study, which I'm sure is applicable to most of the Western world, only men are net taxpayers as a group. Women, because they live longer, they receive all the welfare. They don't contribute jack fucking shit to society economically. Their contribution is negative. It is men who hold up society with their taxes. It's men who do all the things other than giving birth. Men have never stopped being responsible for women. And yet we as a society, under this bullshit idea of egalitarianism, we want to humor these overgrown children and let them pretend that they're equal. And we strip men of their authority, and the result is a dysfunctional relationship where men are continuously responsible for that which they have no authority over. Much like a parent who has an out-of-control child that they can't discipline because they'll be arrested if they do, and yet when the child breaks a window or commits a crime, the parent is responsible for it. Now, that doesn't make sense. That's not a healthy dynamic, and yet that is the relationship that men find themselves in this modern gynocentric society, where women fuck up, men have to pay the price for it, but men have no ability to do anything about it because women are the majority of voters. And they can cry to the government, and men are constantly getting their rights taken away daily. There's like, even recently, there were cases of a man, his wife had like cancer, and they froze some fetuses in case like she became infertile, that they'd have some fetuses. They froze them and everything. So the cancer, she got through the cancer. She wasn't infertile, good for her. But then they decided to get a divorce, and she wanted to not only take possession of the frozen embryos, but wanted to put her ex-husband on child support. And of course, the husband objected, and the court said, fuck you, because the woman's desire to get pregnant supersedes your right not to be a father, and just gave her possession of the embryos and ordered him to pay child support on kids that he didn't want to conceive with his ex-wife. This is the state men find themselves in, and it gets worse by the year. It's only getting worse, and it will always get worse because women, this crazy train has no brakes. Just like a spoiled child is never satisfied, this will only get worse by the year. So this only ends when men end it, unfortunately. And because women are the majority of voters, this cannot be reformed from within the system. We can't just convince women. We can't just have a dialogue because we're dealing with emotional children who won't listen to reason and who frankly outnumber us. So the crazy train ends when we hit the brakes ourselves. And no, women shouldn't have the right to vote. That was the biggest mistake in the history of mistakes. Even Rome, which collapsed, never gave women the right to vote. They still basically went up to that lip, like to the edge of the cliff, but they never jumped off like we did. And unfortunately, now that women have the right to vote, you can't reform the system from within because women can outvote you. So we're basically terminal at this point, and we're headed towards the cliff at full speed, and there's really very few options we have, certainly no good options. But in a perfect world, women never would have been given the right to vote. Women don't even want to work anyway. This idea like, oh, women should have the right to work. No, if their right to work doesn't include diversity quotas, but if you didn't have diversity quotas, no one would hire them anyway. Like 90% of women would get thrown out of the workforce if you didn't have diversity quotas, forcing companies to hire them. So if you believe in a meritocracy and a free society, by and large, the average woman, now there's what I call the 4% rule. If you look at the military, about 4% of women can meet the male standard. They're usually pretty mannish looking, by the way, but whatever. Gender's a spectrum. So there's like 4% of women that can do just as many push-ups and sit-ups, and they can meet the male standard fine. Great. The other 96% can't. And we need to accept the fact that as a group, women are not going to be able to be equal to men under any stretch of the imagination. And instead of trying to force women to be equal to men, which will simply drive them to infertility, destroy their bodies, make them have panic attacks and mental breakdowns, accept that men and women aren't equal, accept that men are inherently responsible for women, and thus men need to have authority over that which they are responsible for. This isn't misogyny. This is simply rationality. This is what works. This is what always has worked. And everything that's wrong with our society can be traced directly back to the enfranchisement of women.
So, JF, what do you think of this? Because I know you've had some experience with courts. So,
I think it's pure poetry. I agree with most of what I heard there. I would say women do have their place on the marketplace, and I think it's more than 4%. There are lots of jobs like cashier, like serving people at restaurants. Women are made for this. And it's a large section of the economy when you think about it. Other than that, I fully agree with Turd Flinging Monkey. The problem is that we have let the state be used as a tool of extortion against us, and we've undermined the concept of property such that even future earnings of a man are subject to possession by a judge based on the lies of a woman. So the woman gets full custody because she lies. She says that the man has abused her, and then she is entitled to future earnings of the man for the child because she has the full custody. This is absolutely disgusting. Any woman who goes on her own should be left to her own devices, and then you would have loyalty emerging from this. If it was the case that the world was a dangerous world and females going on their own wouldn't be protected by the state, they would run back to their husbands, and society would be better for children that way. As far as the case in court, that is absolutely ridiculous. The case that Turd Flinging Monkey was mentioning, we've essentially allowed reproductive rape of a man, and it's legal now thanks to this case. You can have a woman who has stored the sperm of a man against his consent because he did not consent for it to be used anymore. And so, when they say, when these feminists say, you can say no at any time. And even if you said yes for 15 minutes and you say no, then it's no, it's a rape. Yet we have here a case of a male who said no. He said, look, I'm not interested in giving my sperm to this woman anymore. And the court judges that she has the right to take his sperm even against his consent. That is literally an American court raping a man.
Aiden, are you here?
Not just that, but also giving her child support. So not only, and this isn't even new, there's plenty of cases of underage boys being raped by, late 20s, basically women with baby rabies, often teachers, who get pregnant through their statutory rape. Not only are they not punished, they get to keep the baby. And then when the boy turns 18, he gets hit with back child support from the day the baby was born until he turned 18. He's like a high school kid who just graduated. He has no money. And now he owes tens of thousands of dollars in back child support, or he goes to prison because his rapist is entitled to his earnings as an 18-year-old boy.
Absolutely. And men must respond to this by a strategy of resistance and active resistance to this system. If you are stuck in a situation where your ex is trying to get money from you, just leave your job. Just don't make money anymore. Find ways to survive outside of the system. Change country. Don't let a woman get a single dollar from you after she kidnapped your children. That is my philosophy.